In our hyper-connected world, we're literally surrounded by a constant stream of instant feedback, right? Read receipts, typing bubbles, immediate pinging notifications. But what happens when all of that just stops? Well, in today's Explainer, we're diving into a fascinating piece of source material that totally reframes how we look at a lack of response. We're going to explore why silence does not always mean disconnection, and why we might actually desperately need to preserve some space for the things we can't immediately understand.
So there's no reply. Does that mean the relationship is ended? I think we've all felt that absolutely visceral anxiety at some point. When someone just doesn't respond to us, we immediately rush to give that silence a meaning. Are we being ignored? Have we been rejected? Are they mad at us? In modern communication, the speed of a reply is basically treated as a vital sign for the relationship itself. We can see when someone is online, we see if they're liking other posts, so when we just get a blank space directed at us, it feels like this glaring error message. But honestly, this assumes that silence only carries one possible meaning. And this brings us to a really tricky psychological trap. You see, human cognition, our brains, absolutely hate sitting in uncertainty. When another person's intentions are unclear, our mind just rushes in to fill that empty space with a prediction. We go straight from experiencing a simple lack of response to instantly generating this whole story about disconnection. And why do we do this? Well, it's because even a painful explanation like, oh, they hate me or it's over, actually feels more stable to our brains than not knowing at all. Once we attach a meaning to it, we know how to act, right? We can be angry, we can walk away, we can just give up. But that story we just invented, it might not reflect the other person's reality whatsoever. It's really just a mechanism we use to reduce our own anxiety and uncertainty. To really understand this, we've got to totally reframe what silence actually is. The source material introduces this brilliant concept called the invisible processing layer. We usually tend to think of silence as a void, just a total absence of activity. But internally, silence is incredibly active. Think of it as this really dense space operating just beneath a perfectly still surface. Inside that silence, the other person might actually be suspending their judgment. They might be trying to cool down a really immediate emotional reaction. Or maybe they're just recognizing their own lack of understanding, and they're carefully searching for a way to express themselves that won't actually damage the relationship. So just because words aren't coming out right now doesn't mean the relationship has stopped. They are simply navigating this invisible processing layer. And knowing this really reveals the danger of rushing the whole process. When we're faced with someone's silence, our instinct is so often to just push. We say, I don't get it, just tell me what you're thinking. Now, asking for an explanation might seem like a great way to move the dialogue forward, but it actually carries this hidden, somewhat coercive demand. It essentially says, explain yourself right now in a way that I can understand. If the other person is still in this fluid, contradictory state, like maybe they need space, but they really don't want to lose you, or maybe they're just profoundly confused themselves, forcing them to speak right then compresses all that complex reality into rigid, binary choices. Yes or no, stay or leave. By demanding an immediate answer, we're basically forcing a premature conclusion, and the nuanced truth of what they are experiencing is completely destroyed before we ever even get the chance to understand it. Because of this, it is absolutely crucial to distinguish between two totally distinct forms of silence. On one side, we have closing silence, and this is exactly what we fear. It's a withdrawal. The person removes the pathway for any response, and they effectively render the relationship invisible. There is literally no way back. But on the flip side, we have open silence. Now, this person isn't answering immediately, sure, but they are not deleting the relationship either. They're holding on to the uncertainty, preserving the possibility of returning after they've had some time for distance and reflection. From the outside, these two silences look exactly identical. 0 words are being spoken in both scenarios. But structurally, they are total opposites. The difference isn't about the volume of words right now. It's about whether a pathway back remains unlocked for the future. Now, if you are the one who actually needs that open silence, you don't have to provide some massive detailed explanation just to keep the connection alive. You can just use what the source material calls weak signals. These are simple phrases like, I need some time to think, or I really just don't have the words yet, or even, I still do not know. And these are beautiful because they manage to accomplish two massive things at once without actually solving the problem. First, they honestly state that your response is unfinished. And second, they signal that the relationship has not disappeared. These aren't words meant to destroy the silence. They are literally the bare minimum words needed to let the silence safely exist. They totally shift the situation from a painful disconnection into a mutually respected asynchronous pause.
And this actually brings us to a much broader concept, the phase buffer. You see, every single human being processes dialogue at a slightly different speed. Some people can think instantly in words, while others need to sit with a feeling for, days before it ever becomes language. If we force one standardized speed of communication onto a relationship, the slower processor is always going to look defective, or like they're just absent. Silence acts as this phase buffer. It's a protective mechanism that drops the speed of the interaction. And hey, this doesn't just apply to our personal relationships either. Artificial intelligence, and honestly our modern civilization as a whole, is often completely terrified of the void. AI is literally designed to instantly fill ambiguous spaces with these clear, confident answers. But when we rush to fill every single blank, we lose that absolutely crucial buffer space where meaning is actually supposed to develop organically.
We do need to remain objective here, though. Silence can absolutely create space, but it can also transfer the burden. If one person just indefinitely refuses to explain themselves and refuses to take any responsibility, well, they aren't just taking space for themselves anymore. They are shifting the entire weight of that uncertainty, all the interpretation, and all of that agonizing waiting squarely onto the other person. At that point, it's not an invisible processing layer, it becomes an invisible form of domination. Preserving an open silence means you don't force a response, for sure. But it also means the silence shouldn't be limitless, and the burden of interpreting it shouldn't just be carried by one side.
So I want to leave you with this thought. When someone doesn't respond to us, are we truly asking for an answer to our question? Or deep down, are we just asking for a small signal that the relationship has not disappeared? So often we confuse our need for logical understanding with our need for relational security. We demand this full, fleshed-out explanation, when in reality, all we really needed was a tiny spark of connection in the dark, just to know the other person is still there. Sometimes holding space for what we cannot understand is actually the most profound way to keep a connection alive.